Hey guys, welcome back. So this week we're going to continue with our photo manipulations and things that we can do here. And last week, we went over the clone stamp tool, spot healing brush tool, and the healing brush tool. And this week I'm going to show you how to colorize things. So if you were taking a black and white photo, for example, and wanted to colorize that, or if you wanted to change the existing color of something, and we're going to be putting all of our skills to use here. So the first thing we need to do is I'm going to option click and make a double here, make a duplicate so I can always see that original. So hopefully by now you're seeing that anytime we want to do anything in Photoshop, it all depends on our selection. So we have to make a selection of what we want to color. And if there's one suggestion I could make to the class as a group right now is I would say our selections, for the most part, look okay, but I think we could definitely improve our selections. And that'll be the key as far as making your images look as unphotoshopped as possible, okay? Now there's a lot of tools we can use to help us with our selections, and my hope is that I can get you guys trained with your eye so you can visually see a lot of this stuff. And having a background in painting, I tend to like to do things the hard way, or at least I like to use the brushes and manually do a lot of things as far as using the magic wand tool or something where I'm inputting values or playing with tolerances. I'll do some of that, but for the most part I like to use the brushes and treat this more like digital painting. So the first thing, okay, like I said, we need to make a selection, and let's just say we want to make a selection of his shirt. We want to change the color of his shirt for whatever reason. So whatever selection method you'd like to use is totally up to you here. I would say for this one, the quick selection tool is probably okay. And, oh, there we go, it just snapped right into place. So for the purpose of these exercises, I have 5 exercises that you're going to do for the weekly exercise. And I'm going to just go through the first 3 a little quickly just to show you how to do it. But obviously, you'll want to take your time and make these selections and colorizations as clean as possible. So I'll shout out when I'm skipping things that I would prefer you not do, but I'm not gonna, I mean, I could spend, as I just told you, to make tighter selections, but I'm gonna be doing this a little bit quickly, faster, so that way we can just get through it. But if I was, one thing you'd want to do here is you could take it into select and mask and really refine it, although it looks okay. I mean, it doesn't look too bad. If I wanted to maybe feather it, I would, but in this case, when it's underneath the jacket, I don't know if I'd want to feather it too much, but I'm just going to leave it as is, and so that's my selection there. Okay, so now if we want to make this a different color, it's really simple. We can just come down to our adjustment layers here, and we can go to hue saturation, or remember, we can find it right here as well. So if we click on hue saturation, and our menu comes up here, and the shirt's white right now, so it's not going to be too much of a difference. If I move this slider, it will change to that hue, but it's also mixing with that color as well. So what I want to do is I want to hit colorize, and that will basically give me a closer hue change than had I not put that on. So make sure colorize is on. And let's say I want to change his shirt to blue. Okay, so we have our hue slider, then we have our saturation and our lightness or brightness. So recall from the earlier video on color, right? So let's say, okay, I get that looks okay as far as color goes, and that's essentially it. But notice, I mean, hopefully you guys can see the areas that don't look correct, right? I can see that my selection didn't quite get everything I wanted it to, and maybe I could have spent more time at the beginning doing that. But regardless, I would say anytime you make a colorization, I would say come back in and zoom in and look and see, right? Go over everything. And remember, we're working in a layer mask, so anytime I want to make a change here, I can come back down to my brush tool. Okay, remember, if I'm painting in white, I'm going to add to my selection that's here. I'm going to hide, right? And if I'm painting in black, that's gonna hide whatever I have selected again. So if I'm on white right now, I'm gonna add to my selection. And here's where you could come in. Oh, I'm gonna change this flow. That would be for something else. So right now, notice my flow and opacity are both at 100. Okay, and I can see some of this purple has gotten on the zipper. So I'm gonna change this to black. Okay, and then ideally you'd want a really soft edge. And then you could come in and just touch this up. And like I said, I mean, the better your selection from the beginning, the more, let's say, pre-production work you could do, right? The easier your life will be when it comes to things like this. But again, anytime you would do changes like this, I would suggest always coming back in and seeing where you could have tightened things up. So I'm painting in white right here on this part of his shirt. Okay, and here a little bit. But most noticeably, the place that I noticed right off the bat was his neck line right here. So coming in really close here, I would just take my white brush and I would just paint in here manually. Right? Nope, going a little bit too far. But so these little areas like this is what I would look for, right? Kind of around the jacket, that subtle, subtle halo of where that white just didn't quite change the way that I wanted it to. And the more of this you do, the more you'll be able to kind of see these things. Right? I've got a little bit of white in here. So that's kind of the first way of doing it, or at least with the quick selection tool, you could get a pretty good selection. And then, right, if I go back here and if I want to see, right, I can turn this on or off, and I think it looks pretty good. So let's move on now. Here's another. So this one's a bit more complicated. We want to change her shirt as well too, but we're going to go about it a little bit differently, and there's some other things to consider. So first thing is, let's go ahead and make a copy of her. So now we want to change this shirt. Now it's a bit more complicated. There's more areas inside here, right? We can see yellow poking through this lace. So we could do this a couple of different ways. We could use the magic wand tool, but then we notice there's a lot of yellow in the background here. So if I come into my magic wand tool, let's say if I turn contiguous on, so it's only going to select what's touching, I could come up here and maybe for the most part I could get a decent selection, right? I at least could get some of this. Like I said, I like to do things kind of the hard way, but in this case I think it's still appropriate, right? You'd have to come in here and look at this a bit closer, and notice I'm holding my shift and my option keys to kind of add and take away, right? All these little tiny bits in here, like this yellow right here, you could work on that now, but I'm actually not going to do that right now. Like these little pieces right here, I'm just going to leave that. I'm just looking at the bulk of this selection, and I'm paying particular attention to her arm, right? I want to make sure that I'm not selecting her arm, right? Just right, the shadowed area. We're going to get to that, and I'll talk a bit about that. But I just want to make sure I'm not getting any of her arm. And with this image, because it's a bit more complex, right? I don't want too hard of a selection. I might, with this image, I might go into, I might come up to select and mask and make some adjustments here. Like I said, I'm paying particular attention to her arm. I don't want that selection to be too rough. So I might smooth some things out. And like I said, right, this shadowing underneath here, I don't want to get too much of that. But here's where I would have you take your time and work out getting a really nice selection. So adjust these sliders, right? And notice I haven't gone to refine edge. I'm not doing that, but you could come up to refine edge and work around all of this lace patterning and see if that helps you out. But once you've, let's just say you've gone through this, and like I said, I'm not gonna do it here. But if you've gone through this and you've gotten a good selection for the most part, then we would do the exact same thing. We would come to hue saturation, okay? And here's where you'll see. So I don't have colorize on right now. So if I adjust this hue slider, right, I'm going into greens, but notice I'm not getting the hues that I want because these two channels are basically mixing. So you're not getting the authentic color. So if you click colorize, this will give you the truer representation of that hue. So let's say I want to change, I'm going to change it to something darker so I can see where the yellow is. So if I'm here on green or something, it's not so obvious, but go ahead to the red and let's make it a darker red. So let's take that lightness down. Oh, it's saturation up a little bit. So we'll try to make that, yeah, kind of matching some of this background red, but once we get a nice, kind of a nice tone like that, we can see all these areas of yellow still, right? And again, the more time that we spend on our selection ahead of time, we can eliminate a lot of this, but you're never going to be able to get this 100%. So I always like to come back in with my brushes, and I actually do a lot of this manually, and I think those make for the best images, is when you can really pay careful attention and come in and do this as you would, you know, analog paint and canvas. So remember, we're on our layer mask. So I'm going to come up to my brush and I'm going to make it white. My flow is still at 100%, but this will be important later on if I want to make things, if I make more subtle adjustments. But what I would do is just come in with my brush tool and I would, again, I'm using my brackets, open and close, just find these bits of yellow, and you can easily paint over, well, not paint over, you're opening up your selection, right? You're adding to it. And then these yellow bits in here, that's why I didn't do anything with this earlier, is I knew I was going to come back in and refine some of this. And this is where I would challenge you to take your time and really look through this. And the goal is we want to make these changes as seamless as possible. We want to integrate this so it looks like that, you guys you're so good that this looks like she's just wearing a different colored shirt. Okay? And we can see that already is looking much better, right? I can see all this yellow in here, and here we go. I left that spot, but I would come in and paint that, paint this. So you guys get the idea. You can do all of that on your own. And here's where the arm is important, because we see a little bit of the dress. We see a little bit of that yellow was still on the material of the dress. So I'm going to clean that up first. Okay. And what's the thing that you notice about her arm? Well, hopefully you can see that the color of the dress, the yellow dress, is bouncing off of her skin. And this will be something that I'd like you all to be looking out for, is the way that color works, right? Color bounces off of surfaces. And here's where you could, let me just get this correct here, but let me show you what I would do here. Once I get this here. So what I would suggest doing here is I would take your flow way down. I would take it to maybe 5% and make sure you're on a really soft brush. Okay, and then you'll play with your heart or your size. But I would say coming in with a really, really low flow, we want to just pick up just a little bit of that red from the dress and apply that to where the shadow is on her shoulder here. Right? Now it doesn't look like I'm doing much, but I am, and I'm I'm on a really low setting. I could maybe bump this up to 8, maybe 10%. Let me go. I think 10 might be too much, but 8%. And we just want to get just the subtlest hint of that red color. Now, if I go too much, if I go too far, then I would just switch back to my black. And you probably want to be doing these things together, alternating, if you want the true seamless integration. Okay. So if I want to turn this on or off, I can see, right, what that looks like. Right, there's a little bit of that yellow bouncing off right down here. You guys see that? So this is where I would come back with my white. Maybe let me try this on 10. I feel like 10 might be too much, but I need to turn that yellow into just a very faint reflection of that red on her dress. Okay, so it's a really subtle thing that I'm doing, but these are the things that really help make for tighter integration. So as I zoom out, it doesn't look much different, but doing that will help these look more naturalistic and seamless. So I'd like you guys to be doing that as well. So that's kind of another method. I mean, it's taking off of the guy using the same tool, the quick selection tool, but again, using the hue saturation layer to affect our changes, make sure it's on colorize, and then looking back after you've made that initial change and using your white and your black to help oh, my flow is still low. There we go. Make sure that goes back up. But take your time with this and practice. I'm really going to be looking at your craftsmanship here, right? Some of you, I can tell, are making your selections way too fast and not really considering your subject that you're trying to layer mask. Some of you are doing really, really well, but I've just noticed if there's one thing, like I said, that we could work on would be your selections. So take your time with this one, right? So here, there's a little bit of an area, just like on the guy's shirt, where you could come in and fix that. And if I go over a little bit, then switch back to black. And then let's make sure we fix little things like that, okay? So the third way I'm going to show you is a bit different now. I'm going to show you a couple tricks here. So this is the image. This is the third image. Now this is her hair. The image itself was blue when I got this. And let's say we want to change her hair color. We want to make that back to, I don't know, probably brown or black or something. Let's just say that that's our task. So I'm going to option, click, right? So I have my double here, my duplicate. And I talked about this early on in the course, but I kind of glossed over it because the magic wand tool basically does a very similar thing. But for this selection, make sure we're on the top layer here. And if we go to select and, oh no, where am I? Oh yeah, select and then color range. The reason why I'm doing this is because what I'm trying to select is this blue, and I don't see that anywhere else in the image, and there's good contrast. So if I click somewhere on her hair, right, I can see if I click on at least a blue area, we can see here everything that is close to that range is showing up in white. And you can adjust how much, think of the fuzziness as the tolerance here, right? The higher this goes, the more inclusive it will be to that base color that I select. And the lower this is, the more exclusive it will be. So color range can be helpful when you only really have, one color that stands out that you're trying to select. Now, you could use the magic wand tool same way and select a tolerance and turn contiguous on or off, but I just wanted to show you this as an option. I don't use this too much, color range. I tend to use the magic wand tool before I come here, but this is here for you, and I'll show you kind of a neat little trick you can do here to help with your selection. So I'm just clicking around until I feel like I've gotten a good selection. So let's just say that, okay? So that's my selection, but notice it's picked up her eyes, and right there's some of her skin is being picked up. So I hit OK, and this all pops up here, okay? And what I'm going to do now is, with my quick selection tool, I'm going to see if there's just things I can quickly remove, but maybe her eyes, I can option click and I can get rid of her eyes at least. So once I've made that selection here, notice it's definitely not perfect, right? There's a lot of big gaps in here, and I could, if I wanted to take my quick selection tool, I could come in here and I could start to manually try to add a lot of this stuff, but you know, I might get, these things might snap out of place and whatnot. But let's just say I had a good enough selection here. I could, wait, I'm gonna undo that. I could come to select and mask, okay, and I'm gonna adjust these sliders here. And remember, K was the black and white, and V was the red, but let's say K, and that shows me what my selection is right now. And I'll go to my refine edge, and she's got, you know, some stray hairs and things like that. So I'm going to just go ahead and do this just on the perimeter. Okay. Okay, I'm coming down in here, and right, there's a lot of information down here to get, but like I said, I'm doing this quickly. I would hope that you would spend considerable more time getting this correct. Okay. And I'm just going to hit OK. And let's just so we can see it, I'm going to use my hue saturation layer, and I'm going to hit colorize, and I'm going to turn that, let's go this way. Let's go to brown, or whatever color you'd like, but something different than blue. Could be purple for this, I don't mind. But let's say, okay, so we can see this is not looking that great. We have all this, you know, all these extra bits here. It's not the best selection. So remember, if you hold Option or Alt and click on your layer mask, it'll show up here in black and white. And this is where I wanted to show you a pretty neat feature you can do. So if we come back to our brush tool, and if I put it to white, okay, and I have my flow at 100, so here's where I could, if there's definite areas that I know need to be included, I could come in here with my white and just paint on this, right? And it's helpful for large areas, but if I make a mistake, so if I come down into her face like that, then that's not good, because now I've just revealed some of that layer, or some of that hue layer there. So I'm gonna undo that, and I'm gonna hold Alt and come back to this. And what I'd like to show you here is, now that we're a little bit more familiar with the blend modes, the brush tool works the same way. So if I come up to the brush tool, and if I come down to overlay, okay, so overlay is going to look for those pixels that, I'm on white right now, so it's going to look for those pixels that are already light, and it's going to ignore the rest. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to turn my flow down just a little bit. So I'm clicking on white here, so all these pixels that are already white, if I just keep moving around and keep clicking, it's going to brighten those up. But if I come into the black, it doesn't do anything. So we can see, right, the pixels that are grayish, these ones that are right here, if I click and I'm moving around, once I get to these, they will gradually lighten up, right? We can see that, but the black won't do anything because I'm on overlay. And it works the same way with black to hide. If I'm clicking here, nothing happens. If I move over here, nothing happens. But if I get close to where it's not white, then it will start to remove some of that. Now the thing is here is it can make for really hard transitions if you're not careful and if you don't quite adjust your flow and blending right. We can see this division here is a bit harsh, right? Well, actually we can see it's a little bit harsh there. So what I might do is come back and I might come up to normal and maybe soften some of this. Okay. But I did want to show you overlay as a way to help with areas like this, for example, where we've got some stray hairs. I mean, basically what I'm doing is I'm refining the edge, but I'm doing it with an overlay brush instead of the refine edge tool. And this, like I was saying, I kind of like to do things the hard way, but now that I'm on black and I come in here, we can see it works really well to make quick, right? To make quick edits, right? Where it'll take away a lot of those middle values and it'll either make them black or white or hidden and revealed. And if I switch back to white, then all of this right here, it's going to bring that out, but as I get closer to the edge, it's only going to affect what's already lightened or or darkened if I were using black right now. So I'm going to have you work these tools and try to use this overlay to your benefit, this overlay brush. And so notice, so I'm on black now. If I hover over the eyes, right, and just keep working them, they'll eventually go away. But right here, as I'm on the edge, nothing happens. So it can be handy, and it can be a little tricky to use and get used to it, but it's fairly handy. So I'm going to option click and get out of there, and you don't have to be in the black and white mode. Remember, I'm going to switch this back to white. When I don't have that going, if I switch to white and I'm painting here, notice I'm just, right, I was kind of using that black and white so I could see the edges, but you could also stay on the color. Let me switch my flow. You could stay on the color image and fix the things that you can directly see, obviously. And then when it comes to those smaller micro adjustments along the edge, so here, for example, that's when you could jump into that overlay brush and start to work things that way. Okay, so take your time on these three, and the ones that you don't have video instruction for, I'll have written instructions as well for you here. So here, your task will be to change the brick color, the sweater, and his jeans, right? And I want you to take your time and really make this as seamless as you can, okay? The last one that you're going to have to do will be the true test. Is you're actually going to have to color in some skin tone. So I have this image of the boy that this one I worked on and kind of did myself and really took my time and made nice selections. And this is the black and white image. And your task will be to colorize this. And I was thinking of kind of a film, film quality. It's a little bit desaturated, but I think I did okay. The skin tone, I think, could maybe tweak that a little bit more, but I have things here grouped for one. That's another thing that I think some of you could be doing is I have his shirt grouped into different parts, his face and his hair, and then the background. So these 5 will be the weekly exercises. There'll be a couple more for you to do a little bit later after this goes up, but these are the ones that I'd like you to work on and really try. The goal here is to really try to make these colorizations look natural, right? Because it can look really bad if you don't get this correct. So let's spend our time and develop the skill and really try to make this really try to make these changes natural. Okay,